what if I told you that we are probably more than halfway through the Super Famicom episodes for日本の購入品紹介? I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure we are. So, like, I don't know, bear with me, I guess. But let's dive right back into it. Super Famicom, the Super Nintendo before the Super Nintendo in Japan. And yeah, as a big baseball fan, we'll start with Ultra Baseball Jitsumebon 2, which is a December 1994 Japanese exclusive baseball sim developed and published by Culture Brain, the same company that did all of the Super Chinese games. And this was apparently going to come to North America, but was canceled. I don't know, there are games in this line that did come to North America. But one sec. Gameplay-wise, I don't know what to tell you, aside from it's a baseball sim in a line of baseball sim games, but the line did have modes that had power-ups in them, basically what Backyard Baseball would end up doing in the future. So that's kind of cool, but it is baseball. This is the 5th game in the series, and the first 2 games actually did come to North America. The first one in 1989, Baseball Simulator 1000 on the NES, and in 1991, Super Baseball Simulator 1000 on the Super Nintendo, but every game after the first 2, including this one, would be Japanese exclusive. Of those games, the 6th game in the franchise was released in 1995, but then Culture Brain took a long break to come out with the next one, with GameFAQs saying that a 2014 3DS title came next. That was card-based, I don't know. Codex Gamicus listed a DS title that was apparently before the 3DS one, but I couldn't find any info about that. But yeah, one more game, and then it seems like the series kind of went into hiatus. I don't know much more than that, but I think the fact that Culture Brain worked on it, around the same time as a bunch of Super Chinese games, I don't know. Anyway, I love baseball. My team sucks. Whatever. We move on. I do really like this type of puzzle game. So the next one is same game, which is a March 1996 matching game developed and published by the famous Hudson. And this one's a tad confusing, but here we go. Obviously, you see it's a very big cartridge. But you've probably played games like this before. I'm a big fan of Toy Blast, where you're just clicking groups of tiles that are the same color, but then the other blocks fall and you can make new matches and so on. Imagine if it was Candy Crush, but instead of needing to move pieces to make matches, you just click the matches already. That same game. So this specific version is apparently a port of a 1985 Japanese home computer game called Chain Shot that was ported to like every Japanese home computer, but it was evidently very popular enough to be released on regular video game systems, so I don't know, this is one of those examples. The first time Chain Shot left home computers was for a Mario-themed Satellaview game in 1995, which, if you're not familiar, the Satellaview is basically a Super Famicom add-on peripheral service for you to download games over Japanese airwaves. So the first time the game came out physically for home computers was this release, but kind of Chain Shot was already on Super Famicom at that point. There was also an original Game Boy release coming in April 1997. Interestingly, this cartridge, as you see, has a little cartridge slot at the top, which I have always thought was interesting. And I always thought it had to do with the Satellaview for some reason, but I never really dove into it. So essentially, memory packs would be put into the top of cartridges like this to download or rewrite data. So kind of think of it as a way of sharing save data via tiny, smaller cartridges. Wikipedia's example is with RPG Maker 2, where you could rewrite the memory pack to have your data on it, presumably to then bring to a friend's house and upload it to their game. I think I got that right. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, Nintendo used to be so cool. What happened? I'm kidding, of course, but I became a little extra fascinated with the extra cartridge slot, specifically with a regular Famicom game that I showed off months ago called Nantetate Baseball, where it was basically what we would want now, where instead of buying a brand new game, all you would do is just buy little roster upgrade packs to put into like the back of the cartridge. That's somewhere up there. I don't know, but the game industry used to be so ahead of its time. Now it's money. I don't know. So this cartridge apparently had a slot for downloading characters into this puzzle game, which it seems kind of weird, but a single Reddit post says something about downloading Bonk and Bomberman, which kind of matches for a Hudson game at the time. Those are two pretty big Hudson characters, if you will, especially Bomberman. Bonk maybe not so familiar, but Bomberman definitely. But I don't know, same game, kind of interesting thing, especially weird title. I had no idea what I was getting into with the same game, and I didn't realize it was a puzzle game. But anyway, next game, a little bit of background. The original Royal Blood was released in Japan on the Famicom in August 1991, with its North American release coming to NES 7 months later in March 1992. That original version was ported to several Japanese home computers from September 1991 to May 1992, culminating with a Sega Mega Drive / Genesis version in June 1992. However, 4 months after that, we got Super Royal Blood on Super Famicom in October 1992, with a North American Super Nintendo release coming shortly thereafter in December 1992. Just 2 months later, it was developed and published by the famous Koei, just like the original Famicom and NES release. So it's good continuity there. The games are all roughly the same with very minor changes between ports, but the game is overall a medieval turn-based strategy game with your goal being to use every warrior and monster at your disposal to take over a fictional island. As the story goes, there's a mythical crown with gems called Gemfire, which I believe is the title of one of the North American releases, I'm pretty sure. A power-hungry king gets a hold of it, wreaking havoc all over the island. The daughter gets super pissed. I guess she would be the princess if he's the king, but the princess gets super pissed, takes the crown and all the gems in it, and literally magically spreads those stones all over the island. And you play as one of 4 families in the story, each with their own scenario, and your goal is to turn-basically attack areas or upgrade your attack forces, or perhaps use the occasional diplomacy to get what you need. So I think all 4 families have their own goals, but it's all roughly within the same story, which is pretty cool. The gameplay looks pretty neat, actually, and it seems like an overall cool spin for the turn-based / strategy genre of the time, but it would unfortunately seem like the game has died and only really lives on in spirit, which is kind of sad. The game would get a Japan-only sequel only on PCs. Some soundtracks were later released. GiantBomb.com had like the longest article I've ever seen for a Super Famicom game on it, so that was pretty wild. But other than that, this just seems like a sad example of a game lost to time. So rest in peace, Royal Blood. And Super Royal Blood, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, next one up is an interesting one. This is Yokoyama Mitsutero Sangokushi, which I think we've talked about at some point in like a PC Engine episode, but that game had a very similar title with Sengokushi in it, and I was like, oh, that's Romance of the Three Kingdoms. And this also has Sengokushi in it. And this is also not Romance of the Three Kingdoms. So apparently this like middle century Japanese period was very, very popular to use as an entertainment setting, I guess. In this case, however, we have some more background with Sengokushi being a manga, specifically a manga that this is based on, which was a super long run from 1971 to 1987. So like I said, it's based on that feudal era of Japanese history, but it follows a boy named Liu Bei as he goes from being poor to wanting to rule the kingdom. So there's that. There was an anime in a similar vein from 1991 to 1992 titled the exact same as this game, with Yokoyama Mitsutero being the writer of the manga. So the name of this game is literally author's name, his manga, which is kind of funny. And this game is based on the anime, so all the pieces of media are interconnected, even if not necessarily in the traditional way that most Japanese media franchises are. So like, that's pretty cool if I'm being serious, if I'm being honest. So this game is the first of 4 games in the very short series of games based on the anime, with this game releasing in June 1992 and being developed by the popular TOSE and published by a subsidiary of Bandai called Angel. So this game is a turn-based war sim, a lot like the game we previously talked about, and a lot like Romance of the Three Kingdoms games that basically own this genre. So honestly, I'm probably just going to keep running into Romance of the Three Kingdoms knockoffs. I don't know. So kind of similar to Super Royal Blood, you have choices between violence and talking it out. So I'm just glad that I got back-to-back games that are roughly the same thing. I'll be in a different setting this time. I don't know. There would be a PC Engine CD game that I think is some sort of port of this, but I couldn't super confirm that. But there were also 2 more games on Super Famicom in 1993. in 1994, but it seems like since then the series has been mostly dead in the water. So another kind of sad series, maybe lost to time, 30 years ago. But yeah, this is definitely an interesting one. I'm not going to pretend that I know a lot about this next game, but I will say that I am intrigued enough by it that I wanted it to be last, and I'll just flash it. It is Star Ocean. So this is the first game in the Star Ocean series, debuting in July 1996, and is an action RPG developed by Tri-Ace and published by Enix, of course, the future half of Square Enix. So Tri-Ace has primarily done Star Ocean games, but they also have toes in other games whose titles I recognize, like Valkyrie Profile, Resonance of Fate, Radiata Stories, and Dragon Drive. Not Drag X Drive, like on Switch 2. Dragon Drive, that's actually what it's called. So I think it was a Nintendo Direct or something the first time I saw a Star Ocean game, even though I had heard of this series before. And I don't know if it was a new game or a port. I'm leaning toward it was a new game, but in that Direct, it had this absolutely stunning 2.5D or 2D HD style, and I immediately fell in love with graphics like that, even though I'm probably never going to play any of those games. Like Octopath is kind of there, Triangle Strategy is kind of there, but I've never played a game in this series, let alone any game in the genre, so I have to say I have immense respect for the design. And then I see these things again in like Dragon Quest HD remakes, and I'm just like, wow, they're gorgeous. So full disclaimer, I did go back and look at the original gameplay just to see that I'm not like sucking up to these games. But even though it's obviously not the same, it is still very, very charming, and I'm sure at least one person in the comments can go crazy. So like, please tell me more about this. So according to Wikipedia, this is one of the first few RPGs whose story and ending are directly impacted by the player's choices, which is obviously a monumental step, but it also made other leaps and bounds technologically in terms of software that I can't even remotely to begin to understand. But just for context, there's voice acting in the game, which definitely wasn't uncommon for the time, but it was uncommon for the time, and we in 2025 we can't even get Pokemon games to have that, so I don't know, kind of weird. But yeah, otherwise the game is a party-based RPG. We've seen that quite a few times, where you and your friends recruit a maximum of 8 characters to help you on your journey to cure a disease and stop a war, I think. But the party-based system, the random battles, the dungeon crawling, of course, all very, very RPG. So there's so much I want to say that I don't know if I can properly do, so I very much welcome feedback, like I was saying, or trivia, or whatever it might be. But the big takeaway is that this game kickstarted a very prominent video game franchise, one that, like I said, is still getting games today here in the 2020s, and one that also branched out into anime, manga for a very short time in the late 90s and early 2000s. So the series, since the first game, has been received well, and this is honestly a great example of a genre I wish I knew how to just pick up and play, because I'm genuinely so fascinated. So if you happen to know a game in this series that is, chronologically makes sense, or just super friendly to enter into the series, please send it my way, because Star Ocean is just very, very cool to me. So Tri-Ace ended up getting busy on the next game, releasing 2 years later in 1998, but the later Square Enix would circle back to this game in 2007 to remake it on PSP as Star Ocean First Departure, but the development was done by TOSE instead. So that's Star Ocean. I know I didn't do it justice, but just know I was very excited to talk about that. So that's everything I got for this episode. As always, I hope you learned something. If there's anything I missed, anything I got wrong, please correct me, please teach me. I would love to continue learning about these games as much as I have hopefully taught you something. So, with that said, bye!